It is the Resistance Report, February 9th, 2017. Good evening. Tonight I thought we'd look at Donald Trump's bullying and what he's actually trying to accomplish. It's a good day to take a look at his techniques for bullying because there was a lot of bullying that went on today. I'm particularly sensitive to bullying, you might say, because when I was a little kid, 3, 4, 5 years old, I was very short. Still am very short. But when you're very short and you're a little kid, you tend to be bullied a lot. And I was. And I learned that the only way to deal with bullies was to stand up to them, and often to join with others in standing up to them. But you also have to know what they're trying to do. And I became quite well tuned, quite vigilant about what bullies are actually after. And so I want to share with you, and judging by, and we're going to take today as an example, what Donald Trump is trying to do. Well, let's start with what he did this afternoon when the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals came down with their opinion affirming the district court judge's decision that Donald Trump's Muslim ban, he doesn't want to call it a Muslim ban, it is, we all know, should continue to be stayed until there is an opportunity for a judicial determination on its merits, whether it actually violates the Constitution. Now, Donald Trump immediately emitted one of his tweets, and he said, this is all in capital letters, by the way, "See you in court, the security of our nation is at stake, exclamation point." Well, what he's trying to do with this tweet is very much what he did with the series of tweets directed at the courts, and that is undermine public confidence in the independent judicial branch of government. Make it seem to the public, and not only his tweets, but also the coverage of his tweets, and they will be covered again in Fox News and Breitbart and all of the places you can imagine, multiply the message he is trying to get out, that the courts are not interested in the security of our nation. How dare they? They will be blamed for anything that happens. Now, this "see you in court" remark is absurd on a number of levels. Number one, it was the Court of Appeals that actually made the decision. So what does it mean to see you in court? That's kind of an expression that his mentor Roy Cohn used to use whenever Roy Cohn was trying to bully somebody. Roy Cohn was a notorious litigative bully. But it's a little bit odd, see you in court. Maybe Donald Trump is talking about see you in the Supreme Court. He thinks he's going to appeal. His Justice Department, he thinks, is going to appeal the decision of the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals. But I have news for him. That's also very unlikely to help him. First, because the Supreme Court almost never reviews a lower court's decision to stay, that is, temporarily stay a law or an executive order. This is not a permanent stay. This is just a temporary stay. The Supreme Court almost never does that. And secondly, the Supreme Court is divided on most issues 4-4. And if the Supreme Court were to review this particular Court of Appeals decision, unlikely as it might be, it would probably come down 4-4, which means the Court of Appeals decision would stay. That is, it would remain in effect. So this whole business of see you in court is a lot of bluff and bluster. It really is designed to undermine public confidence in the court, and it's about the security of our nation is at stake, exclamation point. What else is he trying to do with his bullying tweets and statements? Well, he did something else today that exemplifies this second goal, and you may have followed this. Now, following the recent raid in Yemen that resulted in the death of one Navy SEAL, which the White House touted as a success, Senator John McCain made the following statement. He said, "I would not describe any operation that results in the loss of an American life as a success," unquote. Now, this was almost baiting Donald Trump, right? I mean, we know that anything that crosses Donald Trump is going to get some sort of a snide reply or some sort of a bullying reply, and it did. what Donald Trump said today, this morning, is, quote, Senator McCain should not be talking about the success or failure of a mission to the media. Only emboldens the enemy, exclamation point. He's been losing so long, he doesn't know how to win anymore, unquote. Now, what Donald Trump is doing with this is he is doing another thing that he does, and that is denigrate, mock, deride someone, intimidate them with remarks that are insulting, trying to bait them in a way. Well, he did get John McCain to respond once again by saying that, reminding Trump that he knows slightly more about war and heroism than Donald Trump does. Now, this is the significance of all this. I bring this up only because you may remember that in the 2016 campaign, Donald Trump questioned whether McCain is a war hero. McCain was willing to let that slide at the time because McCain was up for re-election, didn't want to antagonize Trump voters, but now McCain is back. McCain was re-elected. He has got 6 years to go, and Donald Trump needs McCain's vote and will need it. There is only a Republican majority of 52 to 48 Democrats in the Senate. McCain carries a lot of weight. McCain did not add his vote to the 2 Republican senators who voted against Betsy DeVos, but nevertheless, they're going to be bigger fish to fry, and McCain is now clearly out for Trump. So Trump's bullying strategy, in this case, might have failed. We don't know. Maybe it is working. Maybe McCain is really afraid of being ridiculed. Maybe McCain has been, just doesn't want to risk that ridicule. But this is what Trump is trying to do. Now, there's a third bullying maneuver that Trump tried today. And he tried it with another senator, Democratic Senator Richard Blumenthal. This third maneuver, well, let me tell you about what he did, what the background for this third one is. Now, Judge Neil Gorsuch, who's making the rounds right now in the Senate, he is the Trump nominee for the Supreme Court, and he is trying to beat all the senators. That's what they do when you're a nominee for anybody, for anything. You meet all the senators. You try to develop a rapport with them. Well, Neil Gorsuch was talking to Senator Blumenthal, who was a Supreme Court clerk when he was younger, and said to Senator Blumenthal, according to Senator Blumenthal, that Trump's remarks about the courts, his denigration of the courts, were demoralizing and disheartening. Now, that leaked out, and by the way, a lot of other people heard the same thing. It wasn't just Dick Blumenthal, Senator Blumenthal, who heard it. That remark by Gorsuch about Trump's statements about the Supreme Court being demoralizing and disheartening have been seconded by a number of people. Republican senators and others have heard the same thing, and they said, yes, that's exactly what he said. But here is what Trump did. He attacked quite viciously Senator Richard Blumenthal today. He said, Senator Richard Blumenthal, who never fought in Vietnam, when he said for years he had, a major lie, he now misrepresents what Judge Gorsuch told him. Now, this particular kind of bullying is meant as a diversion. It has elements of, yes, disrespect and elements of ridicule in it, obviously, but what it really is attempting to do is divert attention from what is fundamental here. The fundamental issue is that Gorsuch, his nominee to the Supreme Court, is criticizing the president for going on after the courts. He finds it demoralizing, and he said it's disheartening. Now, that's Gorsuch. That is Trump's nominee to the Supreme Court. That carries a lot of weight. But what Trump wants to do is completely change the subject and make Richard Blumenthal, the messenger, the object of scorn. bring up some piece of dirt about him. That could have the added advantage, perhaps in Trump's view of the world, of intimidating future critics who don't want some dirty linen, some skeleton in the closet to be brought out. But it has the immediate effect of creating a story about Trump and Blumenthal, or about Blumenthal himself, a shooting the messenger kind of technique, which gets attention away from the big story, which is what Gorsuch said about Trump and the Supreme Court. You understand? Now, these are all bullying methods. They all work together, but they are different, and they all have slightly different purposes. Donald Trump, in trying to undermine confidence in the judiciary, in trying to intimidate and ridicule Republican opponents, in trying to strike fear into Democratic opponents and divert attention from big stories, is using exactly the same techniques that bullies have used throughout history. But he's also doing something else. He is undermining our democratic system. He's disrespecting people, and he's disrespecting institutions. And these techniques of bullying, of angry, insulting comments, will come back to haunt Donald Trump, because I think that in the world of public policy and government, you can't get away with the kind of bullying you could get away with in perhaps Trump's business world, when he's very, very wealthy and he's got billions of dollars and he can just bully his way through business transactions. The art of the deal is all about bullying. Well, in Washington, bullying will take you so far. But people remember. You need to form coalitions. People remember what you tried to do to them. John McCain is not going to forget. Richard Blumenthal is certainly not going to forget. The judiciary can't really respond, and Trump knows that. But if you think that there aren't judges out there who are saying to themselves, this man is exceeding the authority of the president and is a danger to this country, you don't know even the judicial mind. Well, I have a lot more to say on both of those subjects, but first I want to take your questions. Celia Goldman, what do you think McConnell's real goal was with silencing Warren? I think that Mitch McConnell believes that Elizabeth Warren would be an easy presidential candidate to whip in the year 2020, and he's setting up Elizabeth Warren to be the next Democratic presidential candidate. By the way, I think he's wrong about that. I think Mitch McConnell thinks that Elizabeth Warren will make a much weaker candidate than she actually will. I think she'll be a very, very strong candidate if she decides to run for president. Mitch McConnell is always, when you know Mitch McConnell, I know a lot of people who know him, I have met him, he is always trying to play the chessboard, 3 steps ahead. Don't trust him one iota. He does nothing carelessly. Sarah DeFresco, how do we respond to Trump saying that he hasn't received a single phone call about DAPL when we can no longer call and leave our comments for the White House? Well, first of all, Sarah, you can certainly leave your comments for the White House, and you can also add your name to a lot of petitions. And Trump is being informed by his team, by his communications directors and others, exactly what is going on and how people feel about various issues. Believe me, and Trump is very sensitive to public opinion. He may not be, he's watching CNN and he's watching everything, and he knows exactly how people feel about the pipeline, and he knows what's going on in North Dakota. I think that Donald Trump is trying to weigh and balance on the Dakota pipeline how much he should make it a big deal, because it may fit in to his Make America Great Again philosophy, which is really make America a great white male Christian nation again, excluding Native Americans. You see, Donald Trump has an instinct for when hatefulness and division and divisiveness is going to help himself. So right now, he's trying to think about this. Believe me, your comments, your letters, everything you're doing is registering at some level. Michael Garcia, do we really need to wait 2 years before Democrats can take back the House, fingers crossed, before Trump will be impeached? Michael, I don't know. I think it all depends on whether Trump continues to move in the direction he is moving, which is basically not just a kind of a disrespectful and childlike character, not just a bull in a china shop, but an adolescent in the Oval Office, and somebody who doesn't understand the limits of his power. Somebody who is a megalomaniac is going to exceed the constitutional limits of his power in a big way. And I don't mean with regard to conflicts of interest, the emoluments clause, many of the things he's been doing already that conceivably could be the basis for an impeachment. I'm talking about a big move. I personally believe that the Putin connection is going to bring his downfall, because that's where Republicans cannot tolerate what Donald Trump probably has done. I believe, and I hope I'm proven wrong, because it would be a terrible, terrible mark against the United States, but I believe that Trump and his people have been in contact with Putin before the election, and I believe that there was an effort to collaborate with Putin's operatives to swing the election for Trump. I think that will come out. I think it will be seen, and I think that will be the basis for impeachment. We'll see. Tom Alden, what do you think about the blocked merger of Anthem and Cigna? This is on the heads of the blocked merger of Aetna and Humana. Will Trump's antitrust division of the Justice Department appeal these decisions? Well, both of these decisions, remember, were against the companies. These were antitrust cases brought by Obama's antitrust division of the Justice Department. And these courts, these lower courts, both decided that these giant mergers of health insurers were going to result in anti-competitive monopolies that would jack up the prices of health insurance. Now, it's in Trump's Justice Department hands, and I think it is pretty likely that they are not going to contest these cases on appeal. In other words, the companies will appeal these findings by the district court, and the Trump Justice Department may say, well, we're not going to contest it, so it goes to the companies. This, I think, is going to reveal itself, if not soon, eventually, to be the real choice we face with health care and health insurance. And whether it is the blow-up over the Republicans' attempt to replace the Affordable Care Act, Obamacare, or it is a blow-up associated with one of these giant mergers, and there are giant mergers in health insurance, either way, people are going to start seeing that the fundamental choice before us is either a health care system run by for-profit, private, giant monopolies that are going to be constantly seeking to maximize their profits and shaft the rest of us, or a single-payer healthcare plan that is going to try to deliver quality healthcare at the lowest possible cost. That's the choice in front of us, and I believe that once Americans understand that that's the choice, they will take a single-payer plan any day of the week. Okay, 2 more questions. We've got Debbie Heinclaff Miller. I'm nervous about the sudden change to gun regulations now, allowing people with mental illness to buy guns. We need to talk about this more. Debbie, you're absolutely right. Even people who are pro-gun and they're sporting enthusiasts, or they very, very concerned about any encroachment on the Second Amendment, they do not want people with mental illnesses designated who have been found to have mental problems, mental illnesses, to get their hands on guns. In fact, every time there has been a shooting in the United States that has been by somebody with a mental illness who went to trial and they found it was a mental illness, what does the gun lobby say? They say, well, the problem is mental illness, so you want to take guns out of the hands of the mentally ill. Well, now the gun lobby is turning around, and a lot of the supporters of the gun lobby are saying, well, we ought to, shouldn't discriminate against people with mental illness. We should let them have guns as well. This is a public problem. It is a public health problem. It is a national emergency. The Trump administration doesn't want to talk at all about domestic terrorism in terms of people with guns, mental illnesses or not, going out and shooting people. They'd much rather talking about Muslims who are allegedly going out and responsible for a lot of deaths. Well, we have a problem here in the country. It has to do with a lot of gun violence, and it particularly has to do with people with mental illnesses getting their hands on guns. Chris Nolan, what does the chair of the Democratic National Committee do? And who gets to vote for that position? And who would you vote for? And if you could, and is it establishment Tom Perez or Bernie-endorsed Keith Ellison? Chris, the Democratic National Committee basically is nothing. It's like Gertrude Stein once said about Oakland, California. There's no there there. There is an organization. It's kind of a shadow of what it used to be. It's a big fundraising machine. And if the Democratic Party is going to have any future as a really relevant organization, it's got to turn itself from a fundraising machine into a real movement from the grassroots up, with very powerful local chapters and state chapters. And it cannot any longer be a giant fundraising machine just to go after big money. It's got to have small donations and small memberships. So in other words, we've got to start with a complete reinvention. And who gets to vote right now for the DNC? Well, people who are members of the Democratic National Committee or members of the local Democratic National Committee. That's who is that? I mean, I've been a Democrat all my life. I was a cabinet secretary. I've never even encountered anybody who knows anybody who votes for the chairman of the Democratic National Committee. I certainly don't vote. And in terms of who I want, I just want somebody who is going to blow it up and start again and create a party that has a real integrity to it and is a movement instead of just a fundraising group. Did I might make myself clear? All right. So that brings us to the end of another wonderful Trump day in America. I could have given you, by the way, a lot of good news. There is good news to report, and I will do that some days when I want to give you a lift. But I think it's also important to keep a vigilance on what is really going on. And when I talk about what is happening and what Donald Trump is doing and how he's bullying and what he's bullying for, and I even, in response to some of your questions, was a little bit, perhaps, harsh. You don't think I was unduly harsh? Good. I'll see you tomorrow.